Good morning, fellow community organizers. I think we can all run for president. What do you think? Let's do it. I got to tell you something. Last night at the Tribute to Reagan dinner, a lady from just outside of St. Louis, Missouri walked up to me and she said, "Tim, I was going to miss this weekend. My grandkids were coming in and my husband and I talked it over and we thought, you know what? We're going to do something even better for our grandkids than spending a weekend with them. We're going to go protect their country so when they're older, they got the same freedoms we got. And so we're coming to Washington for our grandkids." And I was thinking about that last night before I went to sleep, and I thought that's what you guys are about. That's what we're about at Americans for Prosperity. We're making sure that we take time away from our lives, our jobs, our busy community activities, churches, synagogues, all that you hold dear and what you really want to focus on because you care enough about freedom and about your children and grandchildren and our great country to defend it. I just want to say thank you on behalf of AFP to you guys for all you're doing, for standing up and fighting it at a very difficult, challenging time. You know, I was in El Dorado, Arkansas, a great refining and energy town in southern Arkansas back in the summer. And I tell you, it was about 137 degrees out there. It was like walking into a dry cleaner, steam, just everywhere. It was hot and humid. And me being the great logistical planner, our rally was on a blacktop parking lot with no shade. I gave a loafer for the cause that day. It melted to the pavement, I believe. But I had a father walk up to me and he had his 3 kids with him. And he was holding them and he said, "I've never been to one of these, but I wanted my kids to know that my refinery job, this cap and trade issue, their daddy's fighting for his job. And that's why I came here today." And there were a million more stories like that in America. And I'll tell you something, on behalf of that refinery worker in El Dorado, Arkansas, who's worried about losing his job because of this cap and trade, on behalf of that grandmother who's willing to give up a weekend with their kids, grandkids, to come here and defend freedom, we're going to win. We are going to win. Make no mistake about it. We're going to win these battles. Americans for Prosperity's mission is exactly what you see this morning. It's exactly what you saw at the town hall meeting yesterday. It's simply getting folks, Americans from all walks of life, who love freedom, to come together, to stand up and tell their elected officials to do the right thing for the country, to protect our freedoms, our individual rights. That's what the mission of Americans for Prosperity is. When our board came together, David Koch and the rest of our board, you're going to hear from more of them. You heard from some last night. You heard from Jim Miller last night, who served Reagan so well and serves on our board now. When they came together, mornings like this and town hall meetings like last night, it's exactly what they had in mind. And it's exactly what you're doing. And when you look at what's happening in Washington, D.C., and in capitals across the country, you really do see the challenge we face. I think about this. I mentioned the cap and trade issue a moment ago, and we really focused on health care last night because it's a clear and present threat right now. We know what the Senate and the House are doing on health care. We discussed it last evening. You've been in the thick of that fight. We've had our hands off our health care buses all over this country. We're going to keep that up. But I want to talk for just a minute about cap and trade. These guys don't get it. In the face of job losses, we have unemployment almost at 10%. The highest in over 2 decades. And in the face of these job losses, what is the prescription from Al Gore and his friends for our country? It's to ration energy. We need cheap, abundant energy to get our economy going again, right? We don't need the government. We don't need the government picking winners and losers. Look, wind and solar, I'm for those. And we are for those. And we ought to be for as many alternatives as we can possibly get. But to simply on whacked out liberal grounds to say we're going to stop oil and we're going to stop coal and kill and choke off our economy and kill jobs, we're not going to let that happen. We're not going to let that happen. I don't know on the road how many families I've talked to, and they walk up and we're talking about this issue and they say, you know, my utility bills are pretty high as it is. I was up in Montana. We did events in Billings and Bozeman and Helena. And it's such a great state. That state is the size of France. And I think I've traveled every bit of it. It's a great place. But the winters are cold up there. And I've had families come up in Montana and they go, you know, my senator, Senator Baucus and Senator Tester, they actually want to see our utility rates go up 30, 40, 50, 60% during these cold Montana winters. We're not going to let that happen. I go down south where I'm from. I know the accent fooled you, but I go down south where I'm from. And I talk to families who fight through those long southern summers, right? When utility bills go up. And I faced that. I grew up in South Carolina, a little town called Lyman, South Carolina. I know what the utility bills are there. And the thought that these guys, for their misguided, way out liberal ideology, are going to drive up utility bills on southern families and western families in these hot summers, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to win on cap and trade just the way we're going to win on health care. And here's one for you on cap and trade. I know you guys know this, but sometimes things are so crazy, it helps just to talk about them for a moment, maybe if only to make us feel better, but to realize this. Think about this on cap and trade. Under their plan, their scheme, they will ration energy, cap how much energy our economy can emit, which will kill jobs in and of itself. Then they will have the government run a market where energy permits are traded and sold. Now think about this. The same guys who brought you cash for clunkers, who could not run a $3 billion program to subsidize car sales to try to help out their union friends. They blew that one. How on earth are they going to get the government, how on earth are they going to have the ability to run a market that will actually control our energy emissions? Think about that. Millions of Americans, you and I, depending on a government-run market for the cheap, abundant energy we need. Have you heard of these earmarks, right? Imagine the number of earmarks and the wheeling and dealing. You're going to have special interest groups going to politicians and going, hey, look, I really need those permits. Come on, help me out here. You know, I understand you've got a fundraiser next week, right? Maybe we can help you out. I mean, of course, it's all legal, don't worry. I mean, imagine the back scratching and the good old boy dealing. We see it in Washington every day. Imagine if our very energy is dependent on these same jokers doing it. We're not going to let it happen. We're going to win on cap and trade. You're going to hear from Phil Kerpen, who is just doing incredible work as the Director of Policy Research Analysis. When he came into the AFP building 2 years ago, the IQ doubled cumulatively in the entire place. You're going to hear from Phil. He's done some amazing research that exposes a lot of the deals and the wheeling and dealing that has gone on and is going on in the extreme environmental movement with regard to cap and trade. He's going to talk about that later on this morning, and pay close attention. There's a third issue that bears discussion. How many of you heard of this card check issue? Right? I thought so. Now think about this one. To help out the unions, the unions that really drive their elections, the other side actually is willing to use the legislative process to take away the right of the secret ballot from American workers when they try to decide whether or not to join a union. In pursuit of their liberal left-wing ideology and raw power, they're literally willing to support legislation that will kill the secret ballot for American workers. Now, what's more cherished and more valued in America history than the secret ballot? It's one of the foundations for our nation. And it's wrong to think that, sadly, President Obama and Speaker Pelosi and these guys are willing to take that right away from American workers. And Americans for Prosperity, we're not going to let that happen. We're going to stop card check. We're going to win that issue.